Earlier today, the UK government issued new guidance, which they've given the headline Government to lay new law to halt the march of gender toilets in buildings. Which I laugh, not because like the consequences of this are funny, but just the fact that this is like an official government uh, publication, this press release, and yet it has the most ludicrous title. I do like the fact that they've specifically said that it's for toilets in buildings, just in case you thought it was for outdoor toilets. And also, I just love the March of the Gender Neutral Toilets, everyone's favourite documentary film. And so this has been announced today by Kemi Badenoch. So her like official remit is that she's Secretary of State, for Business and Trade. So is the kind of cabinet member responsible for business, which I guess is a pretty pretty large area, but and also kind of like international trade. So she was the Equalities Minister some time ago and has kind of been the Conservative government's chief it's political correctness gone mad spokesperson. In fact, during the last Conservative leadership campaign, she launched her campaign in a hotel, or was it the Queen Elizabeth Centre? I seem to remember now. Anyway, whatever the building was, she made a big deal about the fact that the venue for her campaign launch wasn't going to have gender neutral toilets. But then when they got there, they clearly learned that it was just two separate cubicles. Like, it wasn't like toilet rooms with whole sinks and either lots of cubicles and urinals. It was just like two whole, it's all in one room kind of cupboard scenarios. And so rather than just have two toilets, they got bits of paper and wrote men and ladies on them and stuck those up. And that was how Kemi Badenoch got rid of gender neutral toilets at her campaign launch. Which, the things I particularly like about this are, I mean, there's many a multitude. I like the fact they've gone for men and ladies, which I don't know if this is the same elsewhere in the world, but to my mind, it's definitely, if you want to sort of do a gender binary, it's definitely men and women and gentlemen and ladies. Men and ladies really feels like you've not got the same like words there, you know? And also, there was a picture from this event, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it now, of people queuing for the toilets. And essentially, I think it was just like all the women at the event queuing up to use the loo, and then the men's toilet just not having a queue whatsoever. And therefore, they'd taken a slightly more efficient system of having just two loos for whoever needs them and turned it into a very inefficient system where suddenly most people just waiting for one. Just really struck me as a brilliant kind of shooting yourself in the foot kind of scenario. But today, she's finally got her wish, which was to make this part of the kind of building regulations, I guess. This is, just to clarify, just because I feel like some of this is going to be intriguing. This is the official gov.uk website, right? This is the official website of the UK government. This is an official press release. New requirements will be brought forward for single-sex toilet facilities in new non-domestic buildings to alleviate safety, privacy, and dignity concerns. Responses highlighted particular concerns from women, elderly, and the disabled who felt unfairly disadvantaged as public accessible toilets are increasingly being converted into gender-neutral facilities where users share cubicle and hand-washing facilities. This leads to increasing waiting in shared queues, decreased choice, and less privacy and dignity. I'm interested in increasing waiting in shared queues. That's only happening in places where one of the queues is really efficient and one is very inefficient, right? All this is doing is making one of the queues even less efficient. Yeah, also decreased choice? Is it? What's the choice of? I love the fact... Okay, actually, this is quite good. So basically, they want this to be about getting rid of gender-neutral toilets. So when they talk about self-contained toilets, which of course are self-contained gender-neutral toilets, they can't call them self-contained gender-neutral toilets. So they have to call them self-contained universal toilets. But I'm not sure... Okay, yeah, exactly. So QWERTY 2023 says, I haven't seen many gender-neutral toilets that don't fit their definition of universal toilets. So I think what they're trying to do, in their logic, a gender-neutral toilet is lots of cubicles and then you wash your hands outside the cubicle but inside the room, whereas a universal toilet is a room unto itself. I mean, also, those two things aren't, sort of mutually exclusive, right? I guess the thing that someone doesn't like is, A, they would prefer there to be cubicles, and B, they would prefer there to be, robust cubicles that definitely aren't like the ones in America where there's basically no door. Has anyone been to, American toilet? Am I just going to search that? What do they call it? A stall. Some of the toilets in America, some of the cubicles in American toilets just have a full-on gap that you can sort of see through. They really do not do the they don't do the job at all. If you do find yourself caught short while you're out in America, you do just have to look out and see your fellow toilet goer. So the UK government seem to be trying to draw a clear distinction between sort of this kind of setup, where you like have a urinal here, or you maybe have cubicles, and to clearly distinguish between that and just like, oh, I'm so good at art, everyone, and like this kind of system where both the toilet and the sink are in here. But like, to my mind, this doesn't kind of like define the whole scenario. I used to do some work in schools, and I found that a lot of newer places kind of had this system, but often like the sinks would be like, basically they'd have like a row of like cubicles and like then a block of sinks over here or like somewhere else in the room, but then this would be like just a corridor. So the sinks would actually be like out and about in the corridor where anyone could see them, so that someone could like go in and use the loo and then come back out and wash their hands. And I always thought like this was a very good way of doing it, because A, you get around any worries, concerns that people have about gender and wanting to use the loo that like matches with their gender, but also might feel social pressure or vulnerability around doing so. So you get to kind of see to those concerns at the same time as you get to alleviate any problems with people getting picked on or bullied in the toilets, whatever. Because actually, like, the place that people feel vulnerable both at school and in general life, right, is this kind of general space out here, right? So not when you're actually in the cubicle using the loo, but kind of in whilst you're in this kind of like the foyer. I don't know what you'd call that. And I mean this both in like the reality is that all people probably at some time have been in a scenario in this toilet foyer where they've felt vulnerable in some way, right? This is not a thing that is unique to conservatives or transphobes. But that's not the problem that they're trying to solve, right? The intention is twofold. One is to just kind of whip up more obsession with the lives and actions of trans people, and the other is to hopefully use that for some electoral advantage, right? But just to clarify, to the UK government, if people of more than one gender can use this toilet, that is a gender-neutral toilet. But this is specifically not a gender-neutral toilet, because if they describe this as a gender-neutral toilet, it destroys the whole argument. So this has to be called a universal toilet, which is interesting. That actually, what their kind of consultation showed was that actually everyone just wants this. Like, people want this. QWERTY is quite rightly pointing out, at the launch of Kemi Badenoch's campaign to be Tory leader a couple of years back, they had these. They had what she calls universal toilets. They had 2 of them. And she nevertheless turned these into gendered toilets. Sorry, I was trying to dig down into what the specific consequences of this are. So changing to buildings regulations will mean that new non-domestic buildings, including restaurants, shopping centres, offices and public toilets, will be required to provide separate single-sex toilets for women and men. Self-contained universal toilets may be provided in addition where space allows, or instead of single-sex toilets where there isn't enough space. Okay, so this is kind of a law that does nothing. I would assume that there is some sort of designation that they have to be policed or something, I don't know. And places undertaking major refurbishment, the policy encourages provision of self-contained universal toilets, which are a fully enclosed toilet room with a wash basin and hand drying facilities for individual use. I love the fact that in creating this like press release, which is designed to be hateful, they have had to sit round and try and come up with a word for one of these, which wasn't just gender neutral toilet, so that they can distinguish it from this. The move comes following a set of announcements of firm action to protect spaces for women and girls, such as the government's introduction of a new NHS constitution, which puts safety, patient safety and dignity at the heart of care, including reinforcing the NHS's commitment to providing single-sex wards. What a thing of our times that that a new NHS constitution wouldn't include, like, it should always be free at the point of use, and it always should be publicly owned, and, you know, we should do our best to make sure people can be seen by a doctor and have the treatment they need within a reasonable amount of time, and we should reduce waiting lists. You know, it's important that the first point on the NHS constitution is that trans people have to have a horrible time by going into the wrong ward. Okay, so just to clarify the things, changes to building regulations will ensure that separate single-sex toilet facilities are provided for men and women. Self-contained universal toilets may be provided in addition to single-sex toilets where space allowed. I love the distinction between. I love the fact it starts off by saying that it's going to halt the march of gender-neutral toilets, and then, like, if we replaced universal with, in fact, how many times does the word universal appears? Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times in the Building Regulations 2010 Part T and Approved Document T. Oh, they've even clarified why it uses this word. So the phrase universal toilet is clearly a pre-existing phrase which exists in Building Regulations documents to refer to the universal bit, referring to them being gender neutral. But they've included in the notes to editors at the end of this press release, they've made sure to clarify that, just so you know that they've not made that up. They've not made up the phrase universal toilets just for this press release, even though the phrase universal toilet clearly just means gender neutral toilet. They've not made it up just for this. It happens to pre-exist it. I wonder to what extent, like, if you build one of these with the sinks outside and then the cubicles, like, is the sink being inside, is that what makes it universal? Because what if you build this, but then you put, like, loads of little sinks in here? Is that not universal? It feels like the distinction is less obvious than they may initially have thought.